Alright guys, if you've ever owned or you're curious about owning and using a Fujifilm camera, you'll know that they have amazing straight out of camera JPEGs with colors and contrast that really sell that film look. Fujifilm also offer these film simulations as a Lightroom profile for any Fujifilm user to emulate this look in post-production. Unfortunately, if you shoot on say something like this Nikon ZF, you won't have access to these amazing Lightroom profiles as they are exclusive for Fujifilm RAW files. However, what if I told you you could unlock these Fujifilm Lightroom profiles despite your camera brand? Well, you can, and today I'm going to show you how. This video is sponsored by Brevio, the king of email and marketing automation. Just a quick note before we start, these are third-party Lightroom profiles for sale. There is a link and discount code down below, and for legal reasons these are simply Fujifilm inspired as they're not intended to replicate Fuji's exact color science legally. And how I discovered this is a software engineer named Milos from Fujifilm reached out to me for some feedback on some Lightroom profiles he made based off the Fujifilm simulations and additional color chrome effects. And honestly guys, I was skeptical and very optimistic, but after trying these Lightroom profiles, I just could not gatekeep this and I had to make a video on it. I'm now even collaborating with Milos to create my own film stock inspired profiles, which is super exciting and I can't wait to share it with you guys. A huge benefit, especially for Lumix shooters, is that you can actually load these directly into the camera, like what I did with the S1R Mark II. This allowed me to preview that color in live view and output a colored JPEG file similar to a Fujifilm camera. But the main difference is that in a Lumix camera, you can't adjust the tone curve and add grain in camera effects like you can do with a Fujifilm camera. However, you can use these Lightroom profiles to adjust the dynamic range, the contrast, and add in that texture to match that Fujifilm look, while also harnessing the amazing dynamic range capabilities of your modern RAW files, which in my opinion look a lot better than the straight out of camera JPEGs. So today, rather than just talking about these profiles, I want to quickly jump on Lightroom and show you how all this works. Alright guys, so I've got 4 files here. This is shot on a Sony camera, this is on a Leica, this is on a Nikon, and then finally we also have a Fujifilm file. So we'll come back to the Sony file, and once you've downloaded and installed these profiles in Lightroom, you just find them up in these 4 little dots here up the top right, and you scroll down to where it says Fujifilm Sony. Now, I do have the complete pack, so this has given me all the Kodachrome effects, so we have 107 different Lightroom profiles to choose from, and you can see that these work perfectly fine on a Sony camera. Now we're back on the Leica image, and you can see that these also work perfectly on a Leica camera as well. Over to the Nikon file, and you can see that these all work absolutely flawless. No issues at all, and this is exactly what you get from a Fujifilm camera plus more. And then finally, this is the Fujifilm file, and if we come to camera matching, this is all Fujifilm's different Lightroom profiles. So if I come up to the Astia Soft and I scroll down to the Fujifilm Astia and I just hover over that, you can see that there is very little to no change at all. So you are getting a very accurate color rendition, but a point of difference to notice is that you actually get 8 different color chrome effects, which is quite unique compared to what Fujifilm give you. So I'm going to leave it on Astia because I want to show you something. So I just want to show you that on the left here we have the straight out of camera JPEG shot in that Astia profile in a film simulation, and then on the right we have the RAW file with the Fujifilm Astia profile attached. And you can see that straight out the gate these do look very similar without touching any of your tone or any of your colors. There is a very slight difference in color render that the naked eye really can't spot. And the next thing I want to show you is how to match the dynamic range, the tone, and the contrast straight out of camera JPEG in relation to our RAW camera file. Alright guys, before I show you how to match the dynamic range and correct the contrast, as well as add in those critical grain settings, I got some bills to pay, and I just want to quickly thank today's sponsor, which is Brevio. Brevio is an all-in-one marketing platform that makes it simple to handle email marketing, automation, SMS, and even WhatsApp all in one place. If you're like myself and you run a small business like this studio, or you just want to stay connected with your audience, Brevio gives you the proper tools to do it. You can also build campaigns, automated follow-ups, and track what's actually been working, so no need to jump between 10 different apps. They've even got this new fantastic feature called Aurora AI, which helps you create better marketing flows based on your customer data. So if you guys have been thinking about tightening up your marketing setup, hit the link in the description down below and you'll get 50% off Brevio's starter and standard plans for the first 3 months as a new user. So thank you to Brevio for sponsoring today's video, the all-in-one platform for email, SMS, and automation. And with that said, let's tweak this contrast to match that Fujifilm look. Alright guys, so in the straight out of camera JPEG, you can actually see you've got more detail in these highlights compared to the raw file. So we need to bring our highlight slider down quite a bit to recover this detail. You also notice in the JPEG file that these clouds aren't hitting a pure white, they're a more muted gray, so I'm just going to bring my white point down a little bit as well. And then this is actually quite a faded look with a little bit more detail in the shadows, so I'm just going to lift up my shadows ever so slightly, and I like to lift up my black point quite a lot. And then in the tone curve, I like to bring my black point down to match a similar look, and then again we need to brighten these highlights a little bit more, so I'm just going to lift up the tone curve a little bit. And as you do this, you'll notice you are increasing contrast but also saturation as well, so just dial your saturation back a little bit to match your JPEG file. And pretty much there you have a very similar contrast and dynamic range. We could tweak up this black point a little bit just to match the more faded look, but in my opinion I actually much prefer this more detailed high resolution raw file over this lower quality JPEG file. Now I have done an entire video on the tonal adjustments versus the tone curve, which you guys can watch right here, but I've made it a little bit easier for you guys. On the left I've made some free presets that I left in the description down below, so here is a more strong tonal adjustment, and then I've also done an emulation of different tone curves for the different Pro stocks. So here is a more austere Pro Neg with a more faded look, and then you have a Valvia which has more contrast, and then the classic Chrome which is a more neutral contrast. So I've left these as presets completely for free so you guys can try this out for yourself. And then like any other preset, you do need to adjust your exposure to match to get the desired look that you're after. Alright guys, so that profile has done all the heavy lifting of the color adjustments, so we don't actually need to go into the color calibration or the HSL at all to adjust anything. And now we've adjusted our dynamic range and our tonal contrast. The last step is to add in that beautiful grain. Now if you've ever owned a Fujifilm camera, you'll know you get 4 different grain settings, and I have emulated this in Lightroom. There is a link down below for a free preset for this, but I just want to quickly show you my favorite grain settings. So let's jump back into it. Alright guys, so the grain settings are in your effects tab just above the color calibration, and what I like to do is I actually like to have very small, more fine grain, so I'll reduce the size and I'll lift up the roughness quite a bit, and then I just add the grain amount to taste. And you'll notice when you zoom in, this is a more filmic, sharper grain compared to if you lift the size. It really just makes the image more soft, and in my opinion makes it look a little bit more muddy. But guys, what I've done is I've given you 4 different grain presets which are down below, and these are emulated from the Fujifilm cameras. So we have weak plus small, then we have weak plus large, we have strong plus small, which is definitely my favorite, and then we also have the strong plus large. So along with the different tonal adjustments and the 3 different tone curves, I've also given you guys the different grain settings to really emulate that Fujifilm look despite your camera. Alright guys, so that's how you can get the Fujifilm look despite the camera brand that you use. But before we close out today's video, I just want to show you how you can use your favorite preset along with a tone curve to really take your edit to the next level. I'm also really excited to announce my new analog film curve collection. Alright guys, so we're back on the Sony file here, and you can see that we've got our Fujifilm different Lightroom profiles, and for portraits I've definitely found the Pro Neg High is my favorite. And then I'm going to use one of these tonal adjustments, which is for free down the description down below, so I'm just going to use the medium one. I'm going to scroll down to my new analog curve collection, and I've been working on these for the longest time, and they do change your white balance and your exposure just like any other preset, but these are designed to give you that more nostalgic film look, mainly in the RGB curve. So if we come down to our rose peach, which is both RGB and the tone curve, just like any preset, you've got to adjust your exposure and also your white balance. So I'm just going to bring my exposure down and bring my white balance down a little bit just to match, and then lift up a little bit magenta. So along with this Pro Neg High Lightroom profile with this free tonal adjustment and also my new curve collection, there is a before and there is an after. So using these Lightroom profiles, you really can get creative and dynamic looks. And then you can also use these profiles with your favorite presets. So I have my Anaguri film collection here, and I'm just going to scroll down to my favorite, which is the Astia Soft. Right out the gate, that looks great in my opinion, and that is the Adobe Color. And then if we come into the Fujifilm, you can see that these all work across with a different preset. You might need to just do a few small adjustments. I think for this one I might use the Provia film simulation with the color chrome effects just for a little bit of extra contrast. I'm going to lift up my exposure ever so slightly, give it a little bit of extra warmth, and I'm just going to reduce that saturation just a little bit because this Provia one's a little bit more heavy than my preset. There is a before and there is an after. So these profiles work absolutely fantastic in tandem with your favorite preset. Alright guys, so you can see that these profiles work across all the different camera brands and also tie in with your favorite preset. You don't have to go and buy my presets, but if you do like the way that I edit my photos, of course I sell Lightroom presets based off this nostalgic film look. And I'm happy to announce my new analog film curve collection, which is available in the description down below. If you sign up to my newsletter, you'll receive 20% off your first order. If you want to pick up these Lightroom profiles, I've linked the Fujifilm store down below, and if you use the discount code Jerry, you'll save 10% off. And thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe, and if you do want to learn about how to adjust your tone and your contrast, definitely go check out this video right here. And if you do want to learn how to get that more dynamic range and film look along with more texture techniques, definitely go check out this video right here about how to get that film look. If you guys aren't going to go watch these two videos, maybe you should go grab your camera, go take some more photos, and then just practicing your editing techniques. Alright guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.